All right. How's it going, everybody? So, in this lecture, I'm going to be reviewing the procedural terrain. So, the first thing we want to do is, as you can see, we're set up in master. I just want to make sure that my master branch is pulled. What am I doing? Like that. Just want to make sure it's pulled. And it is, so we're good to go. We do a get status real quick just to check things out. Working tree clean. All right, so now I'm going to check out my branch. Park terrain. All right, so our branch is checked out. And we'll go ahead and open up Unreal. All right. So now, first thing I want to do, let's open up a new level. Default, I'm going to delete that guy. And I want to create a landscape. So landscape tool. And I don't want this to be very big. So I just want it like a 1x1, right? And then in here, I'm just going to give it some shape. So I'm going to use the sculpt tool. To kind of push and pull randomly. And that looks pretty good right there. Okay. Nothing too crazy. All right, so now you want to select your landscape and go to File, Export Selected. And I'm going to put this in the root folder here. Let's put it back one. Let's go back here. So landscape, let's do rock landscape underscore mesh. When we get our export options, here we'll export that. Okay. So then we'll delete this guy. And in my content folder, I'm going to make a new folder. Rock terrain. I'm going to set the color to, let's go with red. And now let's import. Import. Go back one more. I'm going to select my landscape. Open. All right. So here, we'll just leave settings as at default. Import. Don't worry about that. And now we want to open up our landscape mesh. We want to type in CPU and allow CPU access. And doing allow CPU access, let me show you. If you hover over it, basically this allows the engine to pull static mesh data from it. So here you can actually see it says, e.g. to convert a static mesh to a procedural mesh component, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. So we need to enable that option. Additionally, if we choose simple collision here, you see that there's this box around it. Now this box isn't taking into consideration the shape of the terrain, okay? So what we want to do here is go to collision complexity and change that to use complex as simple. And this is going to use the actual 3D geometry as collision. Now this can get extremely expensive, especially when you're working with very large landscapes and things like that, doing it like this. So I recommend, if you want to make giant landscapes and things like that, doing it with sections rather than one very large one will make it so it runs a lot smoother, right? So that's all we need there. So now let's right click, blueprint class, and choose an actor. And this is going to be a proc landscape BP. Open that up. And now we need a few components. So the first component is going to essentially be our base. This base is going to be a static mesh. We're going to name it base. And this is going to be our landscape. So let's choose the landscape. and you'll see it pop up here. We want to scroll down. We want to, no, let's keep collision, but I want hidden in game turned on. Okay? And I'll show you why we're keeping collision and all that stuff later. And then what we want is a procedural mesh component. So right here, select that guy, and we could just leave that name. You could change it to, procedural landscape, however you want to handle that. So now we're ready to go here. So let's go to our event graph, and I want to create let's go off of event begin play. So eventually I'm going to want to set a material for my procedural mesh. So let's do set material. Plug that in there. I'm going to promote this to a variable and then make it public. And let's name it proc material, just so we know which is which. And later on, we're going to be creating a dynamic material that will change the texture based on the depth that we're digging. It's a pretty cool system. So now we want to grab base. And now base is a static mesh component, okay? So what we need to do is actually pull the static mesh from that component. So if you click here, you'll see static mesh right here. So that's what we want to do. Get static mesh from it. And now we want to get section from static mesh. Okay. Now this is pulling the vertice and triangle information from our static mesh here. Okay. So we want to right click and promote vertices to a variable. Right click, promote triangles to a variable. And then I also want UVs. Okay. UVs are automatically generated for landscapes, and this will allow our material that we create later to work. Okay. So now what we want to do is calculate tangents for the mesh. Now to calculate tangents, we're going to get normals and tangents from it. So we need to plug in our triangles, vertices, and UVs. Okay. So now we're going to get our normal and get our tangents. Okay. So now let's grab our procedural mesh, update mesh section, and we want to plug all this stuff in. Okay. This is essentially just updating our procedural mesh component to have all of this data. And then we're going to go ahead and generate mesh. We'll create a custom event. We're going to call that custom event here. And now we want to grab this guy and create mesh section. Okay. So now let's go to our vertices, our triangles, UVs, tangents, create collision, and now let's grab our base, set collision enabled to no collision. Now the reason we're doing this is so later on our AI will function. Okay, so in order for the nav mesh to generate properly, our base object needs collision, specifically pawn collision. So if we go on here, the pawn needs to be blocking in order for the navigation mesh, the nav mesh bounds volume, to generate a navigation mesh so AI can navigate through it. So this gives the engine enough time to generate that nav mesh, and then we turn collision off on the base mesh because we just created new collision for our procedural mesh. So those collisions will match, basically. So then we can run our game, and then it'll be basically dynamic, right? So we'll be able to dig our procedural terrain, and the AI will be able to navigate through those holes that we're digging and so on. So now let's do an alter mesh function. Now we got to pass through a vector variable, and this vector variable is going to be the impact point. because we're going to be doing a line trace later. And actually, let's do a interface. So I'm going to right click blueprints, blueprint interface, and this is going to be my interact interface. Open that up, and here we're going to call it interact underscore I, and we want a vector here, and this is going to be our impact point. All right, so now in here we want to go to class settings, implemented interfaces, we want to add that. Okay, so we're gonna find it, interact interface. So now we want event interact I. So now you can see we have this and our impact point. Okay, so what we want to do for this guy is we want to for each loop through our vertices. Now, as your landscapes get large, this gets very expensive. And so that's why I highly recommend making sure that when you create those landscapes, you're doing it a 1-by-1 section. So it's small sections. Simply put, because using this method, we're cycling through every single vertice on that mesh and checking whether it's within radius of where we're hitting. And then we are essentially updating all of the vertices throughout the entire mesh. It's not a very efficient way of doing it, but it works for small sections for the kind of purposes of this prototype. Right? If you want to play around with it and mess around with the kind of section IDs and get multiple sections working, more power to you. You absolutely can. But yeah, so that's kind of why I wanted to point that out. Okay. And sorry, 1 second. I just need to respond real quick to someone. Sorry, I've been waiting for this student to message me. Sorry, everybody. Give me 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so now what we want to do is subtract the position of the vertice that it's currently indexed on, and subtract that from the actual impact point. Okay, and then we want to essentially convert that, or get the size of it, which is basically converting it to a float value. So now we can check to say, okay, is this less than a radius value? So we'll promote this to a variable. This will be our radius, and we'll make this public so we can edit it in real time. So basically what I'm saying here is the impact point, the where I hit it on the landscape, I'm subtracting that from wherever the current impact point is. And if that is less than the radius, it's going to push that vertex down. So essentially, like if I hit like right here in the center of this square here, and my radius is 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 units in a circle, it's going to push down this whole section here and not disturb anything outside of it. That's essentially what's going on there. Okay, so now I want to branch. Okay. And then off this branch, we're going to set the array element of the index. So basically, if it's a vertex that's within the radius, I want to modify that particular vertex. Right? So the array element is our index, because that's wherever it currently is sitting at. And then I also want to get the vertex here, subtract it, and this is the amount that it's going to go down, okay? So you could essentially split this and then just promote this, and this is our depth. So however deep you want it dug, this is what it would be. So like if we do, I don't know, 50 here with a radius of 200, for example, we can do that. Okay. And then on a completed, we want to update the mesh section. So we're going to do that right here. Okay. So we're updating everything. All that looks good. So now we want to create our interact event inside the player. So we'll go in here. Let's create a new input. So project settings, inputs, action mapping, and I want an interact event. This is going to be left mouse button. And I want to differentiate it from the interface because I named the interface interact. So I'm just going to say interact input. So now here I could say interact input. So this will be my left mouse button. Okay. And what I want to do is a line trace. So on pressed, line trace by channel. Here's my camera, and I want to get the world location of the camera. So world location, again, is the location in the actual level of a component, okay? Because the camera is a component of the player character, I'm using get world location. Now I want to get the direction the camera's pointing in. So if you kind of think of this like a BB gun, okay? The camera here, where this white part is, you can kind of think of that as the tip of the barrel of a BB gun or a paintball gun, right? That's wherever in the world the tip of that barrel is located, okay? The forward vector is the direction that BB gun is facing. So in this case, the x-axis, which is this red arrow here, would be its forward vector. It's wherever it's facing, okay? So now I want to, this would be my start, and then my end, I want to give it a range. So this value, whatever this value is, so in our case, we'll do like 800. This is the range of it. So this is direction I'm facing, which is returns like a 1 value on the X if I'm facing the X direction, or a 1 value in the Y if I'm facing a Y kind of thing, right? So if I multiply that by 800, that'll give me an 800 value. So it's essentially 800 units in front of the player. I'm going to add these two together, and this will give us our end. So now let's break this guy. And I want to do hit actor, but I want to say does implement interface. I'll show you why I'm doing it this way soon. I'm going to plug that in. I want to choose my interact interface right there. And now whatever I do off of here, it's not relying on a specific class, okay? So whatever I hit with this interact event, as long as it's implementing that interface, it's going to call that interact event, which is really awesome. So off true, I want to call, let's do off of hit actor, we're going to do interact I, true, and then I also need the impact point from here. Okay. So like that. Oh, and then I want to, this is asking me if I want to save my empty level. Oops. I didn't mean to do that. Let's do that. All right. So now let's drag out my procedural landscape. I want to put this at 0, 0, 0 in the world. Hit play. So now it doesn't look like much, but when I click, I can dig the landscape down, and you can see that the collision works. So I'm able to walk into these holes and all that good stuff, right? If I wanted to, I could do -50. And you can build up the terrain. And the reason it's -50 is because I'm subtracting. So in the proc landscape over here, I'm subtracting the depth, and that's why doing negative, it's basically minus a negative, which is an add. So that's why that works like that. But what's really cool about this interface system, and I'll show you here real quick. So the proc terrain's done for now. Now, let's say, if you want to dig or build with smaller chunks, what values would you change? Excellent question. So that's why these are here. So radius is how big around it is. So if I do 50, you see how tiny it is? But this is also reliant on how high the resolution is on your landscape too, right? So you could see on these smaller chunks, it's only moving like 1 or 2 vertices because it's not a really high poly model. So if you want really fine details like that, it would have to be a really high poly count. And I don't really recommend that for this system. But if you want it bigger, say 5,000, this whole section is digging down because it's such a big section. It's just not showing it because 5,000 is huge. If I do like 800, see 800 is pretty big. So yeah, just change this value here. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Just with the alter terrain function, it would just be super intense. With how it updates, you would absolutely need to use like the section indexes and stuff like that. But in this case, for just a prototype, I wouldn't worry about that stuff too much. If you want to, you can dive into it afterwards, but I highly recommend getting your requirements done first before kind of diving into that rabbit hole, because it can get pretty complicated pretty quickly if you start diving into the section IDs and stuff. But yeah, so in terms of like little changes here and there, something like this would be much better. Oh yeah, no, I always appreciate the questions for sure. And honestly, something else that's really cool that you could do, you could tie this variable to another like binding. So you could have another key press that changes it from a positive to a negative. So you could switch real time between digging and building up if you wanted to. So that would be something really cool to explore. I would probably do it with another material or blueprint interface though, so you don't have to kind of rely on enable input and stuff like that. In 303 later on in the course, you'll see a few videos that I made, but one in particular that does the key input inside the blueprint class, and I enable input through the player controller like that. So the input is being handled within the external class. It's not the player. And it's not really a great way to program. I don't really know why I made the video like I did. So, I mean, you're more, you can follow the video and stuff. The video still shows good information, but I was just kind of pointing that out that it wasn't my brightest moment. But thankfully, hopefully they'll be getting updated soon. So, but yeah, so I want to show you how cool these blueprint interfaces are. So I want to go in here. Let's do a folder. I'm going to call this pickups. Right click, blueprint class, actor, pickup, BP. Okay. So now I'm just going to add a cube to this guy. And I'll just make him smaller, I guess. A little too small. Something like this. And let's go to class settings. I'm going to add that interface, interact interface that I made. And let's do event interact. And we're just gonna, oh no, what am I doing? I don't want to do that. I'm just gonna destroy actor. We're gonna get into the better setup here in a second, but I just want to show this off. So no other setup is required here. This event is going to get called from right here because this pickup BP is implementing this interface. So I'm going to call this interact event. I don't have to use this impact point vector variable if I don't want to. Okay. So with that done, we can just pop a few of these guys in here. And now you can see when I come in here, I can pick those up. And I don't have to have any specific code casting or relying on anything in particular, which I personally think is really cool. If we really wanted to, if this is specific to the player character, let's see what we could do. Let's add another input. Plug in your third person character, player reference. And then here, this player reference would be self coming from the player. And then let's go ahead and do add score. I'm going to do an input. This is going to be an integer. This is going to be amount. I'm going to create a new variable, score. That's going to be an integer. And I'm just going to add one, pop it in there, and then pop it in there. So whatever amount my add score event passes through, that's how much my score is going to go up. Okay. And then I can just add a print string in here temporarily to get this set up. So now in here, because I have a player reference, I don't have to cast, but I can call that add score event. Like that, and then destroy the actor. So now you can see 10, 20, 30. So it's adding to my score, and I don't have to cast a single time. And I can change anything I want to about these classes, and I don't have to worry about having to accidentally breaking references or anything like that. Let's see, we could, I don't know, how do we want to spice this up a little bit? We could do a text render, I guess. Text render. Let's do center. And one thing I'm going to recommend, if event tick should only ever be used for visual things, okay? You shouldn't have event tick handling any main logic of your game. And the reason for that is event tick functions differently on every single person's computer because it's based on the frame rate. So event called every frame if ticking is enabled. So some people's computers will run it at 30 frames per second, where others will run it at 60 frames per second. So it's frame dependent, right? So if you have your game logic written using a frame dependency, your game is going to function differently on every single computer it plays on, right? This was a big problem with Fallout 76 when they first made the game. They made a multiplayer game on a single player engine. So their game physics was entirely based upon the frame rate. So players essentially could boost their frame rates in game, and they would have speed hack. Yeah, exactly. Yep. They would have speed hack, or they could like drastically reduce their frame rate, and they would be able to like essentially do like slow motion for aiming in battles. Like it was super unfair advantage compared to other players that didn't necessarily know how to do those things, right? So all in all, very bad idea. Don't use event tick for core logic in your game, right? However, in this circumstance, I'm using it for a visual aid. So I have a text render here that I want to pop up when the player is close to it, okay? But I want it to always face the player. So what I'm going to do is I want to use a node called find look at rotation. I'm going to get the world location of the text render. I'm going to get the player character. So I don't have to have a specific reference to my player character because I'm just getting their location. So this is simply referencing the very first instance of the player character. So like this logic here would not work on a multiplayer game. Simply because this is referencing the 0 index of the player character. So if you had like 2 players in your game and you wanted this to reference the second player, this would have to be a 1 rather than a 0. So here, do that, set world rotation, event tick, split, let's split, and I want this to be on the z-axis. So now I'm modifying the rotation. So if I play in here, you see the texts, well, they're always facing me. That's exactly what I want. So now, how do we want to handle having it pop up and, you know, away? Well, we can use a box collision for that. Box collisions are very, very handy. So if I do like a 300 by 300, and then scroll down, I want begin overlap and end overlap. So begin overlap there, end overlap there. Here I want to say is other. Okay, so usually what I would do right here is cast to the player character. I want to try it this way. I don't think I've ever actually tried it this way. So I'm going to say, is the other actor equal to the player character? If it is... oh, and I want to grab this text render and turn off visibility on it. I want to set visibility to true. Copy that, paste it, put it right here. Set it to false. All right, so there it is. Text, text, text. When I leave, it goes away. Beautiful. I might make this a little bit bigger. And let's say left mouse button pick up like that. And it works really well. Oh boy, I just crashed it. Let's open that back up. Let's see what I did. Let's see what I did here. Okay, I'm wondering if it has something to do. Oh, you know what? I know exactly what it is. Okay. So, these oh, I might know exactly what it is. These box collision events. Let's take a look at our collision. They do overlap visibility channel. So let's have it ignore the visibility channel on the box collision because my third person character, if we look at the line trace here, the line trace is using the visibility channel. So that'll help us avoid that line trace hitting the box collisions themselves. Right now I'm just kind of going through and looking to make sure I'm not breaking anything here. Yeah, no, that all looks fine. Let's see. Okay, so let's grab you, grab you, grab you. Yep, okay, so that's what it was. It was hitting everything that was from my pickups there, which was in turn causing the event interact to bug out. So disabling that collision seems to have helped it. And to kind of close everything up, let's create a crosshair. Right click, user interface, widget. Let's do player widget because I'm going to add more to this later. I'm going to do an image. I want to anchor it to the dead center. 0.5, 0.5. Scroll down. Let's change it to like 10 and 10. That might be too big, but we'll see. Now in third person character, you don't necessarily have to do this in third person character. What you could do is like game mode or something like that. But for ease of use, because I'm going to want to add stuff to this later on, I'm just going to do it in here for now. Player W, let's promote this to a variable. Player widget. And then I want to add to viewport. So now it gives us this dot in the center of the screen. I want to make that smaller. Let's go 5 by 5. Yeah, that's good. So now where I look, that's where it's triggering. Pretty cool, yeah? Let's do a score while we're at it. Might as well, right? We're here. Let's do an overlay. And you can do a border and then a text. We'll keep it anchored in the top corner here. I'm going to pull it down. Let's size to, no, let's not size to content. Let's do something like this. And then my border, black and 0.4, but I want it to fill the whole thing. And then this, we'll just center that. And let's choose a different font. I don't have a different font. But you can grab a different font if you want to. Let's do italic. Why not? Yeah, that looks pretty cool. All right, so now we want our text to be a variable. Score text is variable. Now, the reason I do a variable and I do not do bindings is because I want to be able to call any changes that occur manually. Okay, I don't want to rely on the engine to update those variables. I want to do it myself, right? So that's what I'm going to do. So let's go to graph here. Pre-construct, event tick. Now I'm going to type in T and then period, and that gives us kind of a shortcut to custom event. Let's do set score value. Okay. Let's do an input, integer score. I'm going to grab my score text. I want to set text like that, and you want to get, let me show you, set text, and you want to do this bottom one right here. Then I want to right click, append string, plug this guy in here, and then here I want to do a space. No, let's not do a space. Let's do score, that space, enter, and then here I want to do my score value. And then pop that in there. So now every time I update this value, it's going to update my text. So right here, if I do on begin play, keep that at 0. When I hit play here, my score is going to read 0 right up at the top. So now I need to update that value every single time I pick up an object. So we'll go into player. We have our player widget here. Let's go into our add score event. Get rid of that. Grab our player widget. Set score value. We'll just plug that guy in. Click play. Score's there. 10, 20, 30. And you see it's updating our score now. Pretty cool, yeah? And we could also play around with animations if we want. Let's go to window. Oh, we already have our animation. All right, so I'm going to grab my overlay, add animation, score animation. Click that. Add track, overlay. Track, let's do transform. Drop this down. And I want to modify my translation here. So let's do, so -200, I guess. Half a second. Let's go 0. And then -200 again. Oh, you know what? No, I did that wrong. Hold on. Okay. This we want first to be up there. So let's negative 200. Okay. Now I want to do my transform track here. Translation 0. We want 0. I don't want those. So 0, and then here. Zero again. And I might have to adjust the times. And yeah, you know what? Let's do a second and a half. Yeah, let's do a second and a half. And I want this to be 300 again. So in my animation, it comes down, stays, and then goes back. Right? So you can see it comes up and down. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I mean, any animation, once you learn animation, it's pretty much the same everywhere you go, right? No matter what, the animation is going to be the same, or how the animation is made, right? So here, every time I call this set score value, I'm going to play an animation. So the event begin play, we play it. Click that, we get our score. Get our score. I don't like how long it takes. So let's try that. I think I want it to linger a little bit longer. Yeah, that's better. It comes down and goes back up. Not too shabby. You could do rotation, scale, shear. Let's see what else we got. We have visibility, opacity, all sorts of fun stuff that you could do with that. Actually, you know what else we could do? It'd be kind of fun. Let's do material, and this is going to be my widget mat, I guess. Open that up. Let's see, what kind of textures do we have available here? You know what we do have? There's a water normal map available. So if you go to view options and enable engine content and search water N, it comes with a water normal map. So now we can do something like this. You do a couple panners. If you hold P and left click on the keyboard, it'll make a panner. If you hold T, as in Thomas, on the keyboard and left click, it'll give you a texture sample. Panner, we'll do 0.04 and 0.06 and negative 0.02. Yes. Let's multiply these guys together. And this is going to be our normal. We'll add them instead. Add gives a much nicer pattern here. So now we'll go into here. Can I add? I can, okay. Let's see. Widget mat. Change. Oh, does it not use normals? Okay, it doesn't use normals. That's fine. All right. So we got an image displaying. Personal. All right. And we'll multiply that by constant. I don't know. We'll see. Eh, it's not great. Let's see. But yeah, just have fun with it. Play around with stuff. You know, see what stuff is. Let's see what that looks like. It's kind of cool. But I mean, instead of a border, we could try doing an image instead. Huh. Let's try that. Oh, that's kind of cool. Tiling. Hard to see though. But you get the point. Just kind of just make um. But you get, like I said, you get the point. Just kind of play around with stuff. See what fun things you could do with it. Yeah, the multiply wasn't really doing much for that. Um, yeah, it's not bad. We could also do radio gradient. So now it's something like this. And then no tiling. So now it comes down and it's like that. We could even, I don't know, instead of doing that, let's see what this looks like. I don't really know what I'm doing right now. I'm just kind of playing around. Got some purples in there. um, Instead of the opacity, we could try something like this. Or, oh, actually, you know what we could do instead? We could not do that. Just do that as the opacity. Actually, let's do desaturation. We got something like that. That's kind of neat. Change this to red. See what that looks like. Huh, that's kind of cool. We can grab our overlay here, make it wider, and then in here we can change the radius. So if we start previewing this node and change the radius to 0.5, 1, and then density, something like that. Now it fades it. Yeah, right? Yeah, like I'm just kind of throwing out examples here. So here we could do like a solid circle. So you could do something like that. And then we could honestly do this again. Oh no, I don't want to do that. And stop previewing. So now it's like super dense. Kind of cool. And then honestly, we could something like this. Maybe we do a blue. Or delete that, do that, and then delete the top one, do that. So now one of them is blue and the other one is red. And we can turn around and make it denser. Not quite dense enough. Pretty cool. Huh. We could do it both really dark colors too. And then in here, grab our text. Lighten it up a little bit. Oh, like just play around with it. See what you think would be fun. All sorts of really cool stuff. Right? Um, but yeah. So, did you have any questions for me about anything? We reviewed pickup items, score widgets, procedural terrain. The digging element, the event or blueprint interfaces. In the next one next week, we'll be talking about kind of spawning objects. I have a really nice random spawner that you can use. And then maybe we'll dive into like physics pickups and things like that. And then a little bit of AI. That should be pretty cool. Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. Now, kind of as a reminder, you are more than welcome to utilize anything that I show in the live lectures. But I do want to note that I really don't want to see a one-to-one copy of everything I do in the lectures in your final projects. Okay. Like the procedural landscape, if you're doing the metallic detective game, absolutely, I encourage everybody to use the procedural landscape, and I don't expect you to customize it too much because there's not much there to customize. But I don't want to see everything in the live lectures in your final project kind of as your project, if that makes sense, right? Should be a little bit of you in there as well. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and end the chat. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And as always, if you need anything, have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. All right. I hope you have a good night. Thanks.